Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We're actually going to go straight to this morning, where there has been an uproar on the premises. Well, yesterday was an uproar on the premises of the Federal High Court in Abuja yesterday, as the Department of State Services arrested Revolution Now convener Omoyele Sowore and Olawale Bakare barely 24 hours after they were released from custody. The duo appeared in court for the resumption of their trial over charges of treasonable felony for organizing the Revolution Now protest, which the government saw as an attempt to disrupt the nation's peace. Joining us now to speak on the legal implications of this rearrest by the DSS is constitutional lawyer Liborous Oshoma. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. My pleasure.
So, I think thank you. I think, as you can see from the screens, we're showing the video of the rearrest of Sowore and Bakare that happened yesterday. There's been uproar. If you look at the front pages of paper, it says anger, criticisms trail DSS rearrest of Sowore. I guess the first thing I want to ask you is, what do you make of all this and this sort of debacle that has now sort of that happened yesterday?
Basically, what this portends, or what any reasonable man can deduce from this, is that if you still think that this government has a respect for the rule of law, I think that became very clear and obvious yesterday to discerning minds, that the government really does not have respect for the rule of law, and that they believe that they can, ride roughshod on anybody, irrespective of what the court or the judiciary thinks, and that the heavens will fall. And it's a disgrace. It is condemnable that this is happening, not even under a military rule, but under a democratic dispensation. We're just waking up from the shenanigans that happened in Kogi that we called elections, and then this happening yesterday. As this was happening yesterday, the same thing was repeating itself at the Federal High Court, also in Lagos, where some members of the Lagos State Task Force also invaded the court and even, injured a court official. So all of this, if the head is rotten, you don't expect anything meaningful from the body.
Absolutely not. You're completely right. We've all been disabused of any illusions that we had. But now a lot of our viewers have never set foot in a courtroom. So I want you to put in context why exactly this is such an affront, and sort of describe the decorum of the courtroom, all those ceremonial robes, ceremonial practices, the seating arrangements, and how reverentially justice is supposed to be administered. And then you have this scene. Why is there such outrage about this?
If you look at, thank you for that question. Yes, I agree. A lot of people have never stepped their foot on the courtroom. If you look at the statue of justice, and that's why we say justice is blind. It's not supposed to be respecter of any person. You see, you have three arms of government. One that makes the law, that's the legislature. One that's execute the law so made, and then one that's supposed to be, an unbiased interpreter or arbiter of the law so made. In the event also that there are disputes between one organ and the other, it is the responsibility of that organ, that's the judiciary, that, it's our responsibility to arbitrate or decide, on those disputes. And if you look at the court arrangement also, the judge sits right in front facing the bar and then the gallery. And because also judges in Nigeria are dressed as my lord, because they sit, They hold the what do you call it, the knife of both life and death over matters. And because of, not necessarily because of the persons occupying such position, but because of the authority of the powers conferred on them by the Constitution. And that's why, even in a courtroom environment, it's absolute silence. Even lawyers in most cases are not allowed to murmur. Phones, judges have had cause to seize phones from lawyers and litigants when you allow your phone to ring in court. It's that, that's why they say even lawyers should, exhibit decorum in court. And so the chambers of the court is seen as a hallowed chamber, just like the parliamentary chambers where laws are made. That's why when you submit to the jurisdiction of the court, when the state submit to the jurisdiction of the court, the intendment is that, irrespective of the allegations, irrespective of your impression about the matter, once you've submit the matter before the jurisdiction of the court, you are supposed to allow the court take decisive decision or steps on such matter. And that's why we'll have an opportunity of you presenting your case and the other party also presenting this case. So the judges represent the king or the throne as far as, the dispensation of justice is concerned. And so that's why also when suspects are brought to court, they are supposed to be left without handcuff the moment they step into the courtroom, because you are in an environment where you are seeking justice, and you don't bring a man to justice in chain, because the presumption is that once you bring him to justice in chain, you've already condemned him without giving him the opportunity of being heard. And so that's why also when you bring arms, you have security personnel bearing arms in court. It's like having security personnel bearing arms inside an aircraft. So when you have security personnel bearing arms in court or arresting somebody who is before justice, it is not about the judge, it is not about the lawyers, it is not about that accused person, but about the picture you paint of the sanctity of your judicial system or your justice. And the world these days, the world has become a global village where with a click of the button, everybody, irrespective of where you are, you know what is happening. As we're here now, people all over the world are watching us. And so that was the same thing that happened yesterday. The moment the news broke or the videos went viral, everybody, every reasonable and discerning mind condemned what happened, because you do not bring a man do not submit to the jurisdiction of a court of justice, and then you still hold that same person in chain. It's like becoming both the prosecutor and the judge in the same matter, and that is not our legal jurisprudence, because like we say, nemo judes in cassesua, an audiotare pattern.
Thank you for that context. We're going to take a short break now, but we'll be back with more with constitutional lawyer Liborous Oshoma. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show, and once again, thank you, Liborous Oshoma, constitutional lawyer, for joining us this morning to shed light on the rearrest of Sowore. I just wanted to start with so you've given us sort of a sense of what the courtroom is like. With this type of action happening in the courtroom, with what DSS did, I want you to explain to our viewers, or just really help us understand two things. One, how does Nigeria recover from something like this? Because this, to people globally, this just is one of those abuse of powers that just, there's no explanation for it. Secondly, how do people feel about how do people go around believing that there is justice when this type of activity happens and nobody understands what's happening? How can Nigerians trust, or maybe not, the justice system in Nigeria?
You see, it's quite unfortunate. Like the famous musician Davido tweeted yesterday, for a little child watching what happened yesterday who probably had a dream of becoming a lawyer, seeing what happened yesterday, he would rather want to be something else but being a lawyer or a judge. Yeah, and it is so sad. I've also listened to, before I answer your question directly, I've also listened to some argument for and on behalf of the government that what happened yesterday was stimulated by Femi Falana, Leonard Sik, and Sowore, and that the DSS only waited outside to rearrest Sowore. And I laugh. It is Sowore today. It's not necessarily about the fact that it's Sowore, but we're talking about justice. We are talking about the rule of law. We're talking about processes. It is Sowore today. And if we allow it to go unchecked, it will become a precedent in our legal jurisprudence, in our legal lexicon, that security operatives, even though you're on bail, can rearrest you as they wish. If they felt that Sowore has breached his bail conditions, the appropriate thing, the legal thing to do in court would have been for the lawyer handling the matter, also who is a learned sick, to draw the attention of the court to the fact that Sowore had breached his bail condition and request that the court revoke such bail condition. And then the lawyer to Sowore also would have had the opportunity of responding. And that's why we say you hear both sides. But unfortunately, even the lawyer prosecuting the matter was ashamed because he said yesterday, oh, he has been released on bail, he has been released on bail. And so that's the level we have degenerated to. And how do we get out of this? Desperate situation requires desperate measures. I've also read the statement of the Nigerian Bar Association condemning the act, and then also informing lawyers and Nigerians that steps are being taken on the ground to liaise with appropriate quarters on addressing this situation. But I think that we have talked enough. We have issued press statement enough. Yes, it is unheard of that judges in Nigeria had ever done two. This had been taken to their doorstep. It's a clear affront. It's a challenge. What's the essence of sitting as a judge when you know fully where you're writing a judgment and you know that some person somewhere will not obey that judgment? It is bad enough that judges are being kidnapped in Nigeria. It is also bad enough that their orders are being disobeyed with impunity. But the fact that the state security can walk into the court with guns and arrest a suspect who is on bail, I think that should not be allowed to fester. So while negotiating and discussing with stakeholders, I think judges at this point, including the NJC, should sit and meet and decide that they are not going to sit until these issues are addressed, the issues of obeying their court orders and the issues of not desecrating the hallowed chambers of the courtroom. Because this was how it happened with Indiame in Uganda. And so if we fold our hands today and allow state security to resort to self-help, what the message we're sending to the ordinary people is that there's no need coming to court. There will be no need taking your matter before the judiciary. They would rather want to resort to self-help. It's bad enough that people are already resorting to self-help. And so some also have advocated that there's need for stakeholders to meet and prescribe penalties for lawyers who are prosecuting matters for government, or lawyers who fail to advise their client appropriately. From what we see going on, it is not about advice or legal opinion to government. It is about people who feels that they are above the law in Nigeria. When President Yar'Adua came, it was not for any reason that he decided that his programs were going to be anchored on the rule of law. Because no matter how secured your country is, if you decide to violate the rule of law, nobody will want to do business with you, because it is the law that regulates society. It is the law that regulates transaction. And so, which best businessman will want to invest $1 million in your economy when they know you cannot obey your own rules that you made? And so even if the DSS had ample evidence to rearrest and they want to file a separate charge, The procedure is very clear. You apply to the judge in the open court that the man, like I said before, the accused person or the defendant had violated his, with impunity, his bail condition, or that new fact has emerged from your investigation. All of this were not done. And you also notice why I am saying that this action, the courts, the judges need to take desperate steps. What Justice Ojukwu did on Thursday was very commendable. What she did was to refuse to go on with the matter until the DSS complied with her order. Because right in the open court there, the DSS was so, they were so comfortable to tell the judge that they wanted to verify the sureties. And the woman asked, are you sitting on appeal over my matter? Who's the judge here? I have verified the surety and I have issued the release warrant. Until you comply with that warrant, I won't go on with this matter. And immediately they complied, only for them to come the next day and arrest the suspect. So this calls for desperate action. We have been discussing enough. We have issued press releases enough. What this means, if lawyers decide to down tool and the judges decide to go to court, the lawyers will be the one to suffer because your matters might even be struck out. But if the judges decide to take action to protect the integrity and the sanctity of the hallowed chambers of the judiciary, then I think the government would sit up. That's the only language they understand, in as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you for that. You're completely right. As appalling as this is, it just might be the thin end of the wedge. Things could escalate from here if action is not taken. Now, I want to take your thoughts on Femi Falana's observation that it's up to President Buhari to caution the DSS, but where he lays the blame is at the feet of the lawyers in the cabinet, particularly the 4 SANs serving in the Buhari administration, who he named as Oshibajo, the Vice President, obviously, Fashola, Keyamo, and the Attorney General, Abubakar Malami. And he's blaming them. Where do you lay the blame for this?
This is Nigeria, where people fast and pray for political appointments. People don't resign in Nigeria. I was on a different platform sometimes during the week, and a very senior lawyer who also is a founding member of this cabinet was asked, of this government, was asked a direct question, what he made of a step taken by Mr. President, an illegal step that was contrary to the provisions of the law. And he said, yes, he agreed that it was contrary to the provisions of the law, but that the president means well and knows best. And so, that's the way, that's the level we have sunk to, where people who should ordinarily look at our political leaders on the face and advise them. But unfortunately, they shy away from their responsibility and then will fantasize over the issues. Here, from what we have seen so far, excuse me, from what we have seen so far, it does not look as if people who are appointed to advise the president even advise him. They would rather take advice from political. You remember when Obasanjo said, appoint your advisor, it's not compulsory that must take your advice. And it's unfortunate also, you hear some very senior members of the bar, including former professors of law, who will support anything as long as it is coming from this government, whether it's patently illegal. And so I do not expect these same people, some of who are our friends, to advise the president or condemn what had happened. It's unfortunate because between yesterday and today, it's enough for us to hear of condemnation from them. I also saw the condemnation by the special advisor to the president on diaspora, Honorable Abika Dabiri Erewa, condemning what happened to the Honorable Minister for Transport in Madrid. But she also did not condemn what happened in Justice Ojukwu's court yesterday. So you see the double standard playing out here. And so I also would not expect pushing this at the doorstep of the 4 senior advocate serving in the government, who we already know can do nothing, including the Attorney General. The government had violated court orders with impunity. And when the Attorney General was rescreened, this year by the National Assembly, by the Senate. What did the Attorney General say? That national security should override the rule of law. A senior advocate of Nigeria saying that national security should override the rule of law. And then you expect such senior advocate, when the rule of law and the temple of justice is being desecrated, to advise the president, because the body language of the president, and he has spoken it out loudly, is the fact that the rule of law can be suspended when national security is concerned. And who determines national security? It is the rule of law that should ordinarily determine national security. But here, it is people that determines what national security is all about, even though they recycle insecurity daily. And so I think, with all due respect to my boss, Femi Falana, I think the steps we need to take now, it's not to put the blame at the doorstep of people who already know their action. It's to ask the NJC and the judges that if they do not rise up and stand for their rights, fight for their rights, time will come, because some of them will want to, because of they want to be elevated. So you feel, oh, look, I will just have to play along, even though what is happening now, it is unheard of. I think the time is right for the body, for the bench and the bar to collaborate and say, you know what, we can no longer afford this. Because if we continue, you might just be surprised that you get to court, you get court order, you do everything that is possible and necessary, legally speaking, only for somebody to stand up as if we're in a military rule to say, well, you know what, that order we will not obey. We have seen it happen. Zazaki's case is there. Namadi Sambo's case, Sambo Dansuki's case is there. The Sowore's case is there. And so we have seen intimidation of judges, including when Justice Taiwo that granted the first order to hold Sowore for 45 days. You saw how swiftly the Department of State Security obeyed that order. And when the same judge asked them to release the young man, they surreptitiously started threatening the judge that they were going to report him to NJC. Is it in the mouth of a litigant to threaten a judge? If you are not happy with the order given by a judge, it is the avenues, the opportunities are there for you to appeal and not to begin to threaten that you are going to report to NJC. And so once that happens, some of us felt this is a threat and it's a dangerous trend if not checked. But a lot of people kept quiet and started negotiating and started holding meetings. Where had the meeting led us to today? It's further impunity, further desecration, until a day where a judge, or God forbid, like we always say here, will be yanked off his seat for daring to issue order against government. That is the day we will know that truly we no longer have a judiciary in Nigeria. I pray that day doesn't come.
Thank you, Liborous. We're going to take another short break now. Please stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show. We're still in studio with constitutional lawyer Liborous Oshoma. Liborous, I wanted us to just talk a little bit about what next now for Sowore as he is rearrested. Where does he go with this? What are the next course of actions that him and his lawyers can take now?
What is that it is very obvious that whatever step he takes, whatever legal step he takes within the confine of our constitution, that the government is not ready to obey. And so, if I were Sowore, I will refuse. I would rather remain in the custody of DSS and refuse to stand trial any longer. And if I were also his lawyers, I will refuse also to continue with the matter. Let them do what they want to do with him. Keep him and let Nigerians know that, because what's the essence of standing trial? When, even if at the end of the day you are discharged and acquitted tomorrow, the same set of people can say no. Even though we will not appeal the judgment, we do not think that that judgment is valid. And so we still want to keep you. Or that we have new set of facts. And so to that extent, now we want to charge you for another offense. So that's what basically is playing out. You submit to the jurisdiction of a court. The court gives order, you refuse to obey. And then you say the man should continue standing trial. What's the essence? It's obvious that what is basically happening here is the fact that there's the rule of might against the rule of law, and that they were not ready ab initio to charge Sowore before any court. And so, it's for me, it's frustrating, though, but something had to be done. Sometimes, you know, it takes a man to liberate a nation. It takes a step to actually liberate, you know, others from some impunity. And I will not, as a lawyer, in all honesty, sit down and watch the desecration of and the abuse of the judicial arm of government, and then I expect that these same people who will slap justice in his face in public would turn around to obey any order coming from such a government. So the best thing, as we speak now, even though it's extreme, like I said, the first recommendation I made also was extreme. It's for Sowore to refuse to stand trial until there is an undertaking from the DSS that they will comply with any order given by the court. And also, if I were the judge, I will henceforth wash hands of the matter, because I can't be coming to court, even in spite of police presence, then you're still watching your back. You want to give an order, you will need to look at somebody's body language first. The bail conditions are onerous enough. How do you grant a man bail, but still restrain him and confine him to a city where he has no relation, he has no house, he has no apartment? For me, that's not even a bail condition. And in spite of all of that, he still met those bail conditions, though varied at some time, and yet you still refuse to release him. What you're telling the world, what you are telling the man is that, irrespective of what the court says, that you have a premeditated mind. And so what's the essence of the judge still sitting on the matter? If I were the judge also, I'll wash my hands off the matter. If I were the chief judge of the Federal High Court also, I will insist that until there is an undertaking from the DSS to comply with any order coming from the court, that they were not going to assign the matter. Let it be known to the entire world that the court had refused to act, or that Sowore has refused to stand trial, because the DSS has refused also to obey orders coming from the same court they charge him to.
I'd like your comments on the wider political climate, because you'll recall that this same DSS stormed the National Assembly complex and, well, one head rolled as a result. Today, in the strongly worded statement from the NBA, they demanded the immediate suspension of the DG of the DSS, Yusuf Bichi. Till now, we have heard nothing. At the very latest, this morning, we should have woken up to the news that he had been suspended. Nothing has happened. What does that say about Nigeria today? And in the background, we have these heinous hate speech bill, social media bill. What is the current climate? What has been communicated to us as Nigerians right now?
Thank you. Fantastic, fantastic. You see, if anything we hear is, to go by believable, you know that even the action that led to the removal of the former DSS boss, Lawan Daura, I know for sure that some people are still suffering the consequences of taking that step today. Even though it has been denied widely in government quarters. But that step was taken when the president was away and the vice president was acting in his stead. And I do not also, because if we are a serious nation, by now would have heard statement from Femi Adesina condemning what happened also, distancing the presidency from what happened. But unfortunately, the DSS is an arm of government, excuse me, that reports to the presidency. And so it means tacitly they supported and approved what had happened yesterday. And also, so how do you expect these same people to sanction their errand boys, or the people they send on an errand that executed it perfectly? Like we say in local parlance, when a father sends his son to go steal, he will pull down the door because he knows who sent him. And in the same vein here, what happened yesterday, if it didn't have the approval of the powers that be, they probably would have condemned it now, and some heads would have been rolling. But unfortunately, heads didn't roll, and heads would roll. In spite of, if we like, we should press release from now till tomorrow, except drastic steps are taken. When the DSS invaded the National Assembly, at that time, a lot of people called for the sacking of, even the international community also called for the sacking of the DSS boss. And immediately, that step was taken. But here we are. You also remember when the former Secretary of the Government of the Federation was asked a question about the presidency, and he asked, who is the presidency? So it means that, you know, like people have said, there are people who, in spite of what you think, who are cabals in this government. And then, coming to the question of the hate speech bill, it is issues like this that beget hatred. Hatred beget hatred. What hatred can be more than... Have you ever seen a scenario where siren blaring, gun-trotting policemen chase road users off the road because one governor or one political office holder or a minister is passing in a traffic? What hatred can be more than that? You chase people with guns, people who elected you. You chase them off the road with guns simply because you are driving somewhere. What hatred can be more than not paying workers' salary? People who have worked for a month, and at the end of the day, months, you're owing them salaries when your own allowance and entitlement are even paid before they become due. What hatred can be more than promising during campaigns that you will build roads, only for you to abandon such promise after campaign, and those roads are dilapidated and they lead to the death of scores of Nigerians, and nobody's saying anything? What hatred can be more than that? What hatred can be more than a man who sworn to protect public institutions, only to abandon those public institutions to decay and send their children abroad to schools built by others, other public officers? What hatred can be more than all of this? And then I agree, so that social media sometimes can be irritating, but it's the only voice for now that Nigerians have. We have enough laws to curb the activities of what do you call it, fake news. You have libel and defamation law. Even we have seditious laws in Nigeria. So you see if you look at, if you put all the pieces together with the social media bill, with the hate speech bill, with what do you call it, the death penalty for the fake news now, and then what the disobedience to court order and what happened yesterday, the only answer you will get is the fact that some people want to perpetrate themselves in office, and they are gradually putting the pieces together to ensure that at the time, when the time is ripe, there will be no opposition to their decisions, to whatever step they want to take. And Nigerians should know now, it is not about PDP or about APC, but the fact that if we allow these things, a time will come, we'll all wake up, we'll be prisoners in our own home.
We only have 2 more minutes before we have to say goodbye to you, but I just want you to just give us a sense of what can happen from a global fallout perspective. If this continues, this flaunting the rule of law in Nigeria, what can be some of the global fallout, even sanctions? Just give us a sense of what could happen.
First and foremost, the few global fallout is that international businessmen will not want to do business with you. We are the most populous black nation on earth, and yet we are where we are. People still, it is bad enough that, people, when you're doing business with Nigeria, you're doing business with caution. It is bad enough that our government officials are not trusted. It is bad enough that people now need to go to foreign land to get judgment that Nigerian government will obey. Also, with what is happening now, they also should know that the international community is watching. Nobody want to do business with you. Like I said earlier, nobody want to put money in your economy where your laws, you don't obey. You are the first violator of your laws. Also, there are some agencies also that will not want to do government with business with you, that will not want to partner with you, that will not want to donate aids to you to solve some minor problems. And it is the ordinary man that this will affect. So if you have sanctions against the Nigerian government, at the end of the day, government officials will continue to draw salaries and allowances. But it is you and I who are beneficiaries of those interventions that will suffer. And if care is not taken, I see some foreign donors gradually distancing themselves from Nigeria with what is happening now.
Well, thank you. You're always illuminating, try to illuminate some of these issues for us. Thank you so much for your contribution today. Thank you, and we'll have to have you back very soon to continue this conversation.
Thank you.